So for these recap podcast episodes, I guess we don't really do a story at the start, but maybe something that we could do is just talk a little bit about how our own personal training is going, because we've kind of talked about our efforts or interests to try and run sub 3 hour marathons, which is a big undertaking for us. It's not trivial. It's right at the limit probably of what we could possibly do. And we've been trying to use the podcast as one more inspiration to help us along that. So maybe we could just let our readers know a little bit about how it's going. So how's it going, Liz? How's your training going?
Well, it hasn't been ideal. I guess we'll just start with that.
Well, first of all, we were targeting a marathon.
That is now canceled.
Toronto in October, which is now canceled.
Mm-hmm. Then we targeted another marathon. We decided
Yes.
Philly. Philly would be great. It's
so
kind of flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done that a few times before.
I haven't, but I heard good things about it. So
yeah, it's definitely a good one. And we thought, we could maybe go and see Fitz Koehler if she's calling it, because she's taken over calling the Philly Marathon.
Mm-hmm. And that would have been a lot of fun.
But now we're a bit stuck because we live in Montreal, Canada. And to go to Philly, the idea would be to drive, but that means you got to cross the border. And that means you got COVID restrictions.
First problem is that they're actually not letting us in yet. We haven't gotten the okay for non-essential travel into the US. So at this point, it's also not looking very promising that we'll get it before November.
Yeah, so maybe we're going to have a plan C, and I'm not sure whether that's going to mess us up quite a lot. It's already messed up our training.
So we had targeted a date of October 17th with Toronto. Yeah. Then we changed the plan when Toronto was canceled, which was quite early. So that was okay. We had started the training, but, we found out about the cancellation in July. So it was fine. We decided to do Philadelphia, which is November 22nd or around that date.
5 weeks added onto our training program.
Yeah. So then we were like, no problem. We're just going to push the training program. We'll just redo some of what we had done, take back off a little bit for a week, and then jump right back in because we had chosen a plan from one of the books that we read by Pete Pfitzinger and Scott Douglas, Advanced Marathoning. And so we just thought, okay, no problem. We'll just start over and target the other marathon. Now this Plan C marathon is back at October 17th. So now it means we have to chop back off 5 weeks from the training plan.
Short with our training program.
So it means that basically we'll be missing part of the training. We'll have done part of the training twice and part of the training not at all. And in the meantime, I've also been injured. So that's been a bit of a challenge. And this gives me 5 less weeks to get uninjured.
Yeah, I've had a few sort of small problems, but not real like you. You've had some like a showstopper type of injury where you've had to really back off and almost go to zero for a while. And you're still not perfect. So I haven't had that. So I've been able to keep going a little bit better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I've actually found the training tough. I guess a 3-hour marathon is right on the limit of where I could possibly imagine being able to get. And so the training program is tough. And I'm not sure whether it's building me up stronger or actually just breaking me into pieces. I keep hovering between, I do a training and it goes well and I go, yes, I've got this. I'm coming good. I'm getting stronger. And then I'll do like a training of 2 days later and I'll go, oh God, I'm falling apart. And, mentally, it's a good challenge mentally and it's a good challenge physically. So I think the thing is we've got to enjoy the training, decide probably on a Plan C marathon if we're going to do it. And that'll be what it'll be. And we'll get the positives out of the training and learnings and benefits out of that.
And we might surprise ourselves.
And we might even surprise ourselves with Plan C marathon.
Yeah, Plan C might go well. And, Alexi Pappas said that her coach told her that 1/3 of the training should feel very hard. 1/3 should feel okay. and 1/3 will probably feel kind of good. So
yes, we've now referred to 3 of the books that we're going to talk about. So why don't we just run the music and get on with the intro and talk about the books?
good idea. Hi, and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review running books to help you decide if you'd like to read them for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running, or maybe inspire you to try something new. My name is Liz, and with my co-host Alan, we're going to do something a little bit different for this episode, but not unheard of if you've been listening to our other episodes. We will be recapping some of the things that we learned, some fun facts that we picked out, or some things that were just kind of sticking out in our minds after we read books 21 to 30. So the first book I guess we'll start with is My Noisy Cancer Comeback by Fitz Koehler.
Wow, it seems ages since we spoke with Fitz.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe we've already read more than 30 books. We're becoming a font of running knowledge. We should offer our services. Anybody wants to know anything about any books, we've maybe read it by now.
Mm-hmm. Although that's what we think, and then we find out how many running books there are that we haven't read.
Yeah, I'm looking at our list of targeted books to read, and it seems to be, instead of getting shorter and shorter, it's getting longer and longer. Every book we read, we add 3 to the list. And we still haven't added new books that we know are coming next year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so My Noisy Cancer Comeback by Fitz Koehler. I think the fundamental thing that I remember from it is her attitude in front of a shocking, difficult challenge, and using her running. And I think she had a phrase, and she gave us a sticker that said, "Remember, I can do hard things," which was originally her running training. But then she just converted it into, okay, this cancer is just going to be another test, and I'm going to meet the test. It's going to be tough, but I can do tough things. So I often just quote that. Remember, if things are going bad, remember, you can do hard things. You've been there and done some tough things. Here's some more tough things.
Yeah, that was one of the things that stood out for me too. I liked her mantra, I can do hard things. The other thing that I kind of got from the book and also from the interview with Fitz is just the idea that it can happen to anyone. Here is somebody that was super fit and healthy, doing all the right things. She was young and she got that dreaded diagnosis, and so it can kind of happen to anyone. And not saying that we should all be scared that it'll happen to us, but just
never take anything for granted, I guess.
Yeah, and then if it does happen, it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong.
Yeah, super cool.
Shall we go on to Advanced Marathoning by Pete Pfitzinger and Scott Douglas?
Absolutely. And what we got out of this is we both decided we would use this book to take on a new marathon training program. So what we got out of that is an actual training program for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Did we choose the intermediate or the medium program?
Yeah, I think it was like kind of one of the ones in the middle. It wasn't the elite one.
Which is fairly hard. I mean, it's got sort of averages about, I can't remember what it is in miles, but it seems about 120K per week. What I've seen about that training program is it the thing that it offered me that I never had in a training program was more endurance, still trying to maintain your speed. So we've done programs before, which are, tempo and building your tempo and then doing long runs, but doing them slowly. But this is a whole volume of running, not that far off your marathon target pace, sort of 10 to 20% slower than your target marathon pace. And that's an entirely new proposition for me. I found that quite difficult to cope with to begin with, because my legs weren't used to running that amount of volume that quickly.
Yeah.
And I found that it killed my actual high-end speed. like my race, 5K, 10K race pace, and it almost killed me. And I've gradually picked up, and I'm learning to cope with it. And I had a big week this week and been able to do all of the tough runs. And so it's offered a training program with that in it. And as I said in the intro, I'm still not sure whether it's going to make me or break me.
Mm-hmm.
But
I guess we'll find out.
Fun to find out. Yeah. Yay.
Yeah. I was actually looking at my notes for this one, and I had written down something from the chapter about masters running, because that was one of the new chapters in the 3rd edition. And one of the points that they mention is to slow the rate of slowing down with age. You can actually counter the age-related slowing down by continuing to do VO2 max workouts and strength training, obviously, in addition to the other things like sleeping and good nutrition and all that. But I think it's one of those things that as you get older, you think, oh no, I should do less high-end training because I'm going to get injured. But actually, they say that no, it's the opposite. You should continue to do it. I don't think they say do it more, but continue to do it so that you can, continue to keep that that range of speeds.
Yeah, that's a great take home, because it can appear counterintuitive. You just get older, you just get slower, and you don't do anything that's stressful.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can keep your conditioning by a bit of power related work, but a small amount with good recoveries. Okay, want to move on to the next book, which I think is Bravey by Alexi Pappas.
I enjoyed Bravey a lot, just as a story, and just reading about Alexi Pappas' life. It's too bad that we didn't have her on the podcast episode, but the book was fantastic. And I guess like one of the things that I liked to hear was how her coach told her that 1/3 of your workouts should feel terrible, 1/3 okay, and 1/3 should feel great. So it's kind of a good thing for us to keep in mind, especially during, this kind of new training that we've been trying to do, where there's a lot of like medium long runs, sort of not at an easy jog pace, and still quite long. And, they've been a bit, some of them are a bit of a grind. So at least, kind of, I don't know, for me, I've kind of tried to keep that in mind. Okay, it's okay. Like if one of them is a grind, or, I can't hold the pace, like it's okay as long as there are also the ones that feel okay in between.
Yeah, the rule of thirds, and you can apply that to a lot of things, I think.
So I had a couple other things that kind of stood out. So when she talks about how many Olympians experience depression after the Olympics, I thought that was something I never thought about, because, you think, oh, well, these Olympians, they just did like one of the hardest things that you could do in sport, make it to the Olympics. They competed in the Olympics, but I guess when you've been working for one goal for so long, for so many years, and then you've achieved it, it's sort of like, well, what's next?
Yeah, you have a focus, and then your focus disappears. It's kind of like an afterwards blues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know when we've had in the past some, big events like going running in the Selkirks, for example, where you look forward to it for a year and you're building on it and you're talking about how you're going to train for it and how you're going to recover and how you're going to plan and travel plans and conditioning plans and recovery and food and all those things. And then you do it and you succeed to get through it. And then afterwards you kind of have this big empty feeling because you've had so much of your thinking has been built up into that. And I guess they have an extreme version of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things that impressed me was just how Alexi is sort of very human and talks about, her problems and her difficulties. She's very upfront about some of the challenges, but how multi-skilled and how many things she manages to achieve and pack things into a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Curse you, Alexi, because you're packing everything in. You weren't able to have a bit of schedule available to talk with us. So curse you for being such a wonderful, skillful person, being both a film star and a national class athlete. I think she ran for Greece at the Olympics in Rio. Just shows you, what can be achieved if you take on the challenge and just push ahead.
And speaking of challenges, I liked one of her, I don't know if it's a saying, but she talks about turning the word can't to maybe. So instead of like, I can't do this, well, instead, maybe you should just say, well, maybe I can. I don't know if I can. Maybe I can.
That's part of her poem at the start, which is when she explains what she means by Bravey. Be a Bravey, turn can't into maybe, something like that.
Yeah, I like that.
As we say in Montreal, suivant, next.
Next book was Running in the Midpack by Anji Andrews and Martin Yelling. I guess I really liked the goal setting rules. We all know them. It was just a good reminder. Be realistic, be flexible, make it personal, be specific, and be patient. So I guess I have a hard time with the flexibility. So, I really like if there's something written on the plan, like I hate when I can't do it. So, I guess it's a good reminder for me.
Running in the Midpack. Well, I think this is like a pretty good book for people who, want to read up on just running stuff, and they're just an average sort of runner. Probably not a beginner, not a ranked beginner, and probably not a super expert either, although there's plenty of advice in there. So there's great general advice in the book. Well, I liked Anji Andrews and Martin Yelling's dynamic. They seem to be a good pair from book writing point of view. Have a good sense of humor. The great thing about Running in the Midpack, I thought, was the excellent chapter very early on. I think it was chapter 2 on psychology.
Yeah, I like that they put that at the front.
Yeah, they really talk about being mentally ready and basically having your stuff together to go on to a long, whatever your goal is, but a long project in terms of running. So that was, pretty unusual and pretty useful, I think. So an entirely different book is the next one, Running on Tired Legs by Bill Graham, which is more of a sort of personal experience book.
But like a life story.
Yeah. What did you take from that?
I think one of the things was that running can bring you happiness after you stop getting faster. So, Bill Graham, he's not getting faster and it's been a while, but he's still so happy to do it. And he's explored different things like running an ultra and doing mountain marathons, which I didn't know what a mountain marathon was. And now I know it's sort of like it's sort of like an expedition that you're trying to get to the finish line first, but there's no planned route, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's a cross between ultra running and orienteering. I've actually got in my notes an introduction to the wacky world of mountain marathons, because it sounds absolutely like ridiculous and stupendous at the same time. And there's some great tales in there of his exploits. And he's clearly had a great life in running and moved around and done a lot of different stuff.
And met a lot of interesting people because of it.
Spent some time in South Africa, so he talks about comrades a little bit, which is pretty good. And running in the fells of England and the Highlands of Scotland, basically in places that he didn't really know existed, because he turned up for this mountain marathon and they don't tell you where they're going beforehand, and they put you on a boat or a bus and they take you to the start, which is somewhere you've never seen before, and then say, okay, here you go, get the map and off you go and run. And
you're not allowed your iPhone GPS.
No, none of that stuff.
None of that.
And then you have to sleep in a tent and do it all again the next day because it's 2 days. It kind of makes you want to do that sort of stuff. But then you read about one in Scotland where it rains or snows overnight, and you go,
Yeah. I don't
maybe
know about
not,
that.
maybe not.
So the book after that was Make the Leap by Brian Greene.
Yeah, an entirely different book. So it's kind of a management book meets a running book. So it talks about process and procedure and how would you describe it? It's kind of how to go about running, how to maximize running, sort of like almost like a self-improvement book, but running.
Yeah, because nowhere in the book is he saying that, that you should be running more. He's kind of saying just to think about your training differently, and that can help you improve with the training that you've already got. So that's pretty powerful.
And here are some tools to help you do that. And here are the things you should think about. And here are the obstacles that you can think about removing. And here's the way in which you would do that that's sustainable. So it's kind of an overall model, which is pretty powerful. And Bryan actually lives and works in Japan. And there was sort of a Japanese aspect to it in terms of continuous improvement, constant small improvements by looking at certain aspects and methodology of how to do that. And really prepare yourself to suddenly be able to achieve things that you weren't able to achieve before.
Yeah. And he really, that's why it's called Make the Leap, is he kind of describes that improvement happens in leaps. It's not like, okay, today I put some effort, so tomorrow I'm that much better. It's more like, well, you put some effort, you put some effort, you put some effort, and like you don't really know if it's working or not. And then all of a sudden you get to a race and you take 2 minutes off your 10K time. Yeah. And the other thing that he kind of mentions is like, then you will sort of plateau. And for runners to plateau, it's sort of it plays with our heads and we think, oh, that's it. That's the end of my potential.
Yeah.
But it's actually not, because the way that he describes like making leaps is that, you'll always, there's kind of a little plateau where you're sort of at your new baseline. And then, your body's, I guess you're kind of consolidating, and then you might make another leap, and you actually don't really know where your improvement will stop until many years later, once you realize that it hasn't improved for a long, long, long time. So basically the moral of the story is just keep on believing that you're going to be able to make another step.
And basically you can, because are you doing everything perfectly? No. So it's just a question of, if you can find the next thing, you can move your performance up, but then you've got maybe age or a new job or a wife, husband, children, just getting older, and all of that's taking away from your performance perhaps. And it's a question of, can you do a little bit more to counteract that, or manage some of those things better to give you better,
or just not have those things, I guess, get in the way of your training.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also like, he says, ability is not talent. It's talent molded by effort over time.
Basically, if you think, oh, I don't have the innate skills to be that good, thinking like that is what's holding you back. Not
and you actually don't know that, because you'll only know that if you put in the effort, because talent doesn't you don't just express it. You have to do the work also, even if you're
I guess until talent. You're doing the training program and everything else in your lifestyle that Eliud Kipchoge has or does, you won't know whether you're as good as him or not.
And then there was a section that talks about like athletes and coaches. And so, traditionally we're kind of like, and I was like a perfect example of this when I was running with my previous coach, is I would execute the plan that was 100% on me, but he was the one doing the planning and the evaluation. But what Brian Greene says is, no, like, yes, as an athlete, you do 100% of the plan, but you also need to involve yourself in the planning and the evaluation. So you actually should be evaluating your training of the previous season with your coach and deciding like what you're going to do next.
Basically, you have to own your own training 100%. So another good one, and plenty of learning for us in there. Entirely different was our next book, High Performance Nutrition for Masters Athletes. We were all excited about this, and this is by Lauren Antonucci. In fact, one of our quite popular podcasts. People seem to be into nutrition.
I think it's an important topic.
Well, I think I certainly discovered there's an aspect in my own training that nutrition can fill. The key thing for me, I learned as an older athlete, so somebody who's running and somebody who's also well into the age where they're aging, that I need a lot more protein in my diet. A shocking amount of protein even. It was kind of, this is impossible. How can I do this? You know, I think you were very insistent on making the point that carbohydrates are good. If you're an athlete, carbohydrates are not bad for you. They're not fat making like terrible things. They're good. I've always known that. But I think the thing that shocked me was I need to eat quite a bit more protein in order to stop muscle wastage and help my regeneration and my recovery. And in fact, change some of my habits after reading that book.
Yeah, I can tell you that Alan always has his protein drink afterwards, sitting in the car, and he will drink it even if it was warm from sitting in the car during the workout.
After the run, we're chatting. I've usually got the drink out, and I would say probably 95% of my runs end with some kind of protein drink now.
One of the things that stuck out for me was the protein. I'm really trying hard for that. But also most athletes underfuel, most masters athletes underfuel for their training. So that was kind of, I never thought of that. But Lauren said that she even has examples in her book that when she asked her athletes to eat more, they actually started to perform better.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
More to eat and better performances. That's what I call a win-win.
I don't think that's so wonderful. I find it's hard to eat that much. But anyway, I guess we have different opinions on that.
Yeah, I find it's sometimes hard just to organize the meals. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that came out of the nutrition book by Lauren as well was, in fact, if you look at the science and you look at the data and you look at the research, it kind of plays down the idea of a lot of secret little tweaks. We know caffeine works. There's data around that. But in fact, I was surprised at how few other things have solid, comprehensive data supporting their use. So in terms of, supplements and additives and, tweaks, and people will swear by beetroot juice or, pomegranate juice or whatever it is, but there's not a huge amount of data that supports it. There's some logic, and it clearly works for some people, but there's no sort of, not many magical things that you can guarantee that will work.
Yeah.
Mostly you should concentrate on getting the basics right, getting your protein right, getting your carbs up enough, getting your fat fueling,
eating fruits and vegetables,
the right sorts of fats. I mean, have, good fruits and vegetables, and also diets. My general conclusion after talking with Lauren is, if you're an athlete, diets are not a good idea. There are lots of people who swear by some diet, a paleo diet or an Atkins diet or intermittent fasting or something like that. But generally you have to fuel your effort. And diets are just taking away from your ability to fuel your effort, which is already quite difficult to do correctly. So some good info in there, and lots of good points for us, more than probably I can build into my daily regime. Okay, so moving on to the next book, I Hate Running and You Can Too,
by Brendan Leonard.
You want to have first comments on that?
Sure. So I love the pictograms. This book was mostly pictograms. There was some writing, but the pictograms say it all, and they're very cute and funny. So I particularly loved the one with the calendar of, like, all
The
the different
weather.
colors of the weather, and
Yeah.
basically the perfect running days. There were like two of them in the whole year. Otherwise, it was like
Yeah.
too windy, too snowy and windy, too snowy and cold, too rainy and windy. Anyway, like, so you get the idea. Too hot, and so forth. So that one was kind of cute. And basically, the idea is that there's no bad weather, just bad clothing choices. And I also loved the pictogram where it was over several pages, and it was like a little block, and then you turn over, and then there's two little blocks.
It said like a little thing or something.
A
And then it
little
had two
thing,
little
yeah.
things and then five little things.
And then you turn it off, and it says, many small things become one big thing. And you have a pile of little blocks that just made like this one big giant block. So
basically a great way to illustrate, just be consistent and keep doing consistent small efforts. And eventually they add up to something substantial that you couldn't have imagined to begin with.
Exactly.
This was a super easy to read book. So lots of pictures and simple messages, but really nicely put. So, things like, are you a real runner? Well, stop worrying about it. Just do the verb until you become the noun. I.e., don't worry about whether you're a runner or not, just run. And then eventually you will automatically become a runner in your own eyes, however you define that.
Wise words.
Yeah. And it was fun talking to Brendan because it's almost like he's discovered running and, he has a deep appreciation for it, but he also has a funny, quirky sense of humor in the way that he presents it. So it's a very fun to read book with simple messages, but great reminders. So super motivational.
Yeah. So the next book was also a very good story. This Voice in My Heart by Gilbert Tuhabonye.
Oh, she gets it right first time.
Hey.
Gilbert Tuhabonye. Nobody knows because we edited it out the podcast, but you had to have 2 or 3 tries at that before you got.
Yeah, it turns out, when you're reading a book and then you're pronouncing something a certain way in your head, but it's actually not correct. But then you've ingrained it because you've read it so many times in your head. And so, that's what happened to me. At least Alan got a really good laugh out of it. And Gilbert too, actually.
Gilbert was a fantastic person to speak with as well. I mean, he's so positive given what he's been through in his life in terms of, the story was basically his life story from being a refugee and actually being involved in I forget the names of the tribes, the Tutsi and the
Hutu.
The Hutu tribes, yes, that's right. In terms of the genocide or the attempted genocide of the Tutsi tribes in neighboring Rwanda, but also in his country, and how he was involved in an absolutely horrendous scenario where everyone at his school except for him was killed in a sort of genocide type attack. Completely unbelievable to hear somebody sort of talk to you in the Western world about such a story. And now, of course, he's in Texas. He's in Austin, Texas, with a running group. And I think his motto is running with joy, or run with joy. And he's just such a positive guy.
He is.
He hasn't let this embitter him in any way. He has horrendous scarring from burning and machete marks that he has from his childhood. And he's just, just so amazingly positive and forgiving.
Yeah, he started a charity to get running water for all of the households in his country. And one of the things is that he's not doing it just for the Tutsis. He says, like, they're all people and they should all have equal access to water. So his charity actually just provides running water to each household, no discrimination. And I mean, that was just incredible that he was able to forgive, because you can kind of understand if somebody would not be able to forgive in that case like
Yeah,
that,
if
because
members of your sort of family have
your
been
friends
killed.
were killed, and you have all this trauma because you suffered a lot of injuries. So yeah, I thought he's a super inspirational guy. And also, I guess it shows that you kind of never know what you're capable of until you try, because his injuries were so bad that when he saw his running coach, like his running coach didn't think that he was ever going to run again.
No, he'd be lucky to walk.
And he ended up coming back to run at a high level, competing internationally. And that's how he ended up in the US.
And hopefully he's going to bring his
Athletes.
I think they're called Gilbert's Gazelles up to Montreal to run maybe next year. That'd be fun to see him. So the last book in our list of 21 to 30 was the first book that we did on during the Olympics, Abdi's World by Abdirahman.
So Abdi's World was basically Abdi's athletic trajectory mostly. It had a little bit of sort of him coming to the US, but it was mostly his 6 Olympic cycles. There was one cycle that he didn't make it to the Olympics, but now his the most recent Olympics, he made the Olympics at the age of like 43. So he's had an incredibly long career. He just seems like such a, I don't know, he just seems to be at peace with whatever he decides. Throughout the book, like one of the things that kind of stuck out for me was that sometimes doing the right thing for yourself is maybe not the thing that everybody else does. So like for Abdi, he didn't go to altitude training for like several, I think the first few Olympic cycles, because I mean, he was having good success with his training and he wanted to stay in Tucson where he lives with his, with his family, his friends, his coach. And he just didn't feel like he needed to go to train at altitude, even though he had been invited.
I think he was also incredibly loyal in that he stayed with his original coach, and it was working with his coach, and he knew he had a good thing with his coach. And so he was happy to stay. It wasn't broke, so he didn't feel he had to fix it.
Yeah.
And so you don't see that very often, the loyalty level that Abdi was showing. And I think one of the things that shone through to me from Abdi was, no matter how good you are, you should keep your sense of fun. Like, don't take yourself too seriously, and just relax in between times of, you're going to have intense. It's a bit like training. We say if you're going to train really well, then once in a while you have to go really, really hard because you got to push your limit and you've got to, try to make yourself better. But in between times, you should probably go relatively easy. You may have to do that a lot in terms of volume, but I think he keeps his character almost like that. He doesn't take himself too seriously, and he has good sense of fun, and he relaxes and just seems to be like a normal Joe, just doing normal stuff. And then when it comes time to really perform, he gets all serious. And because he does a great job of relaxing, when it comes time to get serious, he can really go for it. And I think that's kind of seems to have been the secret of why he's been able to go on for so long, through 6 Olympic cycles, because he missed one out. So, and getting to the Olympics 5 times.
I liked Abdi's rules to live by. He has like 5 of them. So the first one is actually the one that stuck out the most. A setback is a setup for a comeback, which actually describes Abdi's journey kind of pretty well, because the Olympic cycle he missed was actually the last one, I believe. And you'd think, I think he was probably even told by some people, because he was probably almost 40 at that point, and they were thinking, oh well, he's gonna retire now. And nope, there he goes. He just got back into the training and came back and made another US Olympic teams.
guess we were joking with him when we said, oh, well, what about Paris then? No, you'll have to get back in for the next cycle. It's only 3 years away. But we were kind of joking, and he was kind of joking, but he didn't say, well, there's no way.
I think he's going to try for it. Actually, I mean, I hope he's going to try for it.
It would be great to see him try, even if he doesn't succeed. It would be great to see him try.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to hear his other rules to live by, but the other ones are, there is no such thing as a quick fix. So good to keep in mind, like you can't cram for a marathon. So
no,
like me being injured, we don't know what that's going to give in the end. The last week of a taper cannot make you fitter. Recovery is part of the training, and have fun and enjoy the journey, which is exactly Abdi.
Yes, and absolutely what you've got to do. Because if you judge the journey on your destination, maybe you're not going to arrive in a place and you'll feel bad about all the preparation you've done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the 10 books. I mean, there's quite a bunch of their different things. I think there are some sort of educational type books on nutrition or training. There are story books. Gilbert's book about the genocide and learning to run and being a refugee, etc. Abdi's about the Olympics.
Mm-hmm. Bravey.
And there's sort of a different mixed bag. I mean, some are just general informational books. So, I Hate Running is motivational, and Running in the Midpack is sort of a general information for all runners. So different types. And I guess that's what makes it fun to some extent. We keep looking at books and we keep getting different types of books, and they have different types of sort of interest to them. And it's good to be switching backwards and forwards, and, having tasted all the flavors of different running books is one aspect that I find kind of fun about this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that, people will take something from some of these books, or even by listening to this podcast, maybe they will reflect back on some of the other episodes that we've done, and they might go back and listen to episodes that they haven't listened to about some of these books.
And hopefully maybe it piques your interest enough to go get the book for yourself and, read more about running, because, I don't know, we think that's a good idea.
Because everybody should read more running books.
Everyone should read more running books. Yep.
And everybody should listen to more podcasts about reading running books.
There you have it.
Okay, so that's our summary. Any last words, Liz?
Not for me. You summed it up good.
Okay, so that's our third actual summary program or recap episode. Third one now, because we've covered more than 30 books. So thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve the podcast, or you want to suggest a book that you think we should review for a future episode, please leave us a comment on social media. We are Running Book Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter we are reviews_running. Please be sure to follow us on social media to find out about new episodes when they're released, or you can just subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform to be informed when the new podcast issues. That's all for us for today from Running Book Reviews.
Bye for now.
Bye.